Welcome back to Blacklit Memory. Tonight, we're not just walking into the woods. We're stepping inside, into Kentucky's old cabins, the ones still standing at the end of dirt roads no one claims, where the smoke hasn't risen in decades, and the windows don't stay shut. These aren't campfire tales. They're what gets whispered after. 8 voices, each with their own reason to step inside a cabin and to regret it. What waits inside isn't folklore written down. It's the kind that stains the wood, lives in the mirror, and keeps opening the same window no matter how many nails you drive through it. So before we begin, consider subscribing, leaving a comment, and telling us where you're watching from and what time the clock reads right now. Because I always wonder who's listening and whether you're alone. Now, pull the lantern closer, check the latch twice, and listen close. My name is Hannah Reed. I'm 34. 2 months ago, I crashed the car that killed my husband, Aaron. Our 7-year-old son, Micah, was in the back seat. He made it out with just a scratch. I still hear that silence afterward more than the impact. After the funeral, I tried to stay in the city, but I couldn't afford it anymore. And, honestly, I couldn't breathe there. So I packed what we had left and brought Micah here, to Aaron's family farm in eastern Kentucky. It's been empty for years. Just a quiet old cabin tucked between the ridges. No rent, no traffic, no one asking how I'm holding up. I told myself this place might help Micah sleep again. But the truth is, I was the one who needed somewhere to fall apart. I hadn't been back since our wedding. That was 7 years ago. He used to say the land would outlive all of us. And now it had Micah was quiet in the back seat, hugging his knees. He hadn't slept through the night since the crash. I still saw it every time I closed my eyes. Wet pavement, headlights, the way Aaron's hand shot out across my chest instinctively. I was driving. That part never changed. I thought maybe this place would help. Not just the space and quiet, but the distance. From the hospital, from the pitying faces, from the guilt I couldn't fix. If Micah could sleep here, maybe I could too. The house stood like it had been waiting. A 1-story cabin with a rust-colored roof, dark windows, and a porch that leaned forward like it was trying to speak. The screen door flapped twice in the wind, then settled. I parked under the shed awning and killed the engine. We unpacked slowly. Most of what we had fit in the back seat in one trash bag of clothes. Inside, the air smelled like cold ash and old wood. The rooms were dusty but intact. The silence pressed close. But I told myself that was a good thing. That night, I sat on the front steps with a mug of tea. The stars were sharp above the ridge, and the trees around us didn't move at all. That was when I saw it. A small white stone, smooth as glass, placed perfectly on the outside ledge of the crawlspace window. Too high for a child, too clean for something that fell. I stared for a long time, then backed into the house and locked the door. Twice. Sometime after midnight, I heard the back door rattle. Not a knock, just one slow, deliberate movement of the handle. I got out of bed barefoot, parted my throat, and stood still in the hallway, listening. Nothing followed. The next morning, Micah's pajamas were hanging from a branch out past the yard, high up, fluttering like a flag. I asked him if he'd put them there. He shook his head and didn't speak again for the rest of the day. That afternoon, behind the shed, I found a shape carved into the dirt, a circle with a vertical line right through the middle. Clean, intentional, like someone had taken their time with it. The old dog bowl beside the porch was still half full, but the food inside was swollen and gray, like it had been soaked in water, or something worse. We didn't own a dog. That night, the motion sensor light kept flashing. No wind, no movement I could see. It would light up the edge of the yard, then go dark, then light again. Each time, the trees looked closer than they had before. I just need to hold it together a little longer, I whispered. standing in the kitchen with the hammer in my hand. If I can't fix it, then I'm not trying hard enough. In his bear, I boarded up the kitchen windows and left a knife beside the bed. Micah slept in my room now. I told myself we were fine, that it was just old wiring and small animals and the weirdness of being alone in a place you don't quite trust yet. Then came the noise. It was past midnight when I heard the front door handle turn. Slowly, like someone testing if it had been locked. I grabbed the flashlight and stepped into the hall, breath caught behind my ribs. When I flick the light on and shine it through the front window, the yard is empty, silent, still, but the door creaks once more before going still again. In the morning, there are fresh, muddy footprints on the front step. They lead inward, but none lead back out. After that night, I stopped pretending. I carried the kitchen knife everywhere, kept Micah in my bed. Even during the day, I moved through the house like it wasn't mine anymore, just a borrowed space that something else was learning how to enter. I tried to call out. The cell had no service. The emergency radio in the closet wouldn't even turn on. I don't know if it was dead or broken or if something had already gotten to it. That morning, I loaded Micah into the truck, still in his pajamas, and tried to leave. The engine turned over, but the front tire had been slashed deep, cut clean like a surgeon's line. I stood there in the frost, staring down at it, heart hammering. We weren't going anywhere. I boarded up the rest of the windows that afternoon. Every creak in the floorboards sounded like footsteps. I left Micah drawing pictures at the kitchen table and walked the perimeter one last time. Then I dug the root cellar door out from behind the wood pile and checked the lock. It was just a narrow space carved into the hillside, barely tall enough to stand in, damp, with a dirt floor and old rusted hooks on the wall. But it was hidden, and the door had a bolt on the inside. If anything happened again, that would be our plan. That night was still, the first in days without the light flickering or wood snapping out of rhythm. Micah smiled during dinner, real and small. We lit a candle and read from one of his old picture books. For a moment, I let myself believe we were safe again. I didn't sleep, just watched the ceiling through the dark and listened. The wind picked up around 1 a.m., soft and thin, like it was whispering through the cracks. I almost closed my eyes. Almost. Then came the sound. Glass. Breaking. Sharp and loud from the back of the house. I grab Micah, one arm around his waist, and pull him out of bed. We run barefoot through the kitchen. My flashlight bounces in one hand, the knife still clutched in the other. The back door is already open. Cold air pours in. The yard is soaked in moonlight and frost. We sprint to the cellar. I throw open the wooden hatch and shove Micah inside, then climb down after him. My fingers fumble with the bolt. It slides shut just before something thuds above us. We hold still. It is pitch black. Micah trembles in my arms, a face pressed to my shoulder. I can feel his heart beat against mine. Above us, the boards creak once. Then again. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Deliberate. Something drags across the wood. A metal scrape, like a blade or a tool. Then silence. Then breath. I hear it. Right at the hatch. A slow, steady inhale, followed by an even slower exhale. So close it fogs the air through the gaps in the wood. Then a finger slips through the crack. Dirty, thick, feeling along the inside of the door. Micah's breath hitches, almost a gasp. I cover his mouth and hold him tighter. I don't breathe. I don't blink. We are not here. Then the voice comes. Low, gravel-soaked. Don't make me come down there. They won in the presentations. It freezes the marrow in my bones. I grip the knife but don't move. The finger disappears. Another breath. Then the footsteps retreat, slow and quiet, like whoever it was had all the time in the world. We stay there. Minutes pass. Then an hour. Maybe more. Eventually, the cold sinks in too deep to feel anything, but I still don't open the door. We wait until morning. A neighbor found us just after dawn. His name was Tom Harper. He lived half a mile down the ridge and kept a motion-activated camera pointed at the trail leading up to our cabin. Around 1:45 a.m., the sensor picked up movement. The footage showed a tall figure, humanoid, but not clearly visible, crossing just beyond the tree line. Then the feed cut out completely. Tom said it didn't move like a deer or a bear. It walked straight up the path, slow and steady, like it knew exactly where it was going. That was enough to make him drive up at first light. When he saw our front door wide open and no sign of us, he called the police. But they didn't find any tracks, not even ours. We left that day. I never went back. Now, we live in a small apartment in Ohio. I check the windows every night, and once a week, without fail, I find it scratched faintly into the wood beside the front door. A circle, split clean down the middle. We got there just before dark, the kind of dark that turns the trees black and makes the hills feel farther away than they are. The cabin sat off a gravel loop deep in the woods near Jackson County. For sale sign out front. No lights inside. It was Derek's idea, mostly. He said the realtor told him the place was already cleared out. The owner moved out a month ago. I was supposed to be the lookout, but we both ended up going in. The back door gave way with a bit of pressure and a crowbar. Inside, it felt too clean, like someone had just left 10 minutes ago. Chairs were tucked in, books lined up, old clock still ticking. The smell was piney and dry, with a faint hint of whiskey. We weren't stupid about it. We brought flashlights, gloves, took only a few things. A couple of old bottles, some brass pieces from the mantel, a mirror framed in wood that looked hand-carved. My name's Cody, by the way, 24. I do odd jobs, fix decks, clear brush, flip scrap when I can. Derek's been my friend since middle school. We do this, sometimes nothing serious, just picking from places nobody cares about anymore. In the kitchen, we found a bottle of rye whiskey left in the fridge. No label, just a thick glass container with a cork top. We figured we earned a drink. The rain had started by then, heavy against the roof. I found the attic hatch by accident. It was set into the ceiling in the hallway, nailed shut, but not in a normal way. 4 thick nails crossed over each other like someone was trying to keep something in. I was reaching for the pry bar when Derek said, "Nah, forget it. No time for creepy stuff. Man, get the good stuff and let's crash." The wind outside picked up hard right then. Thunder rolled low and deep, and the rain came down in sheets. We stood there a moment, listening. It was clear we weren't going anywhere for a while. So we uncorked the bottle again, took another few swigs. The whiskey hit warmer this time, or maybe that was just the nerves finally settling. We dragged an old couch over near the fireplace and made camp there. No power, no heat, but we had sleeping bags. He played music low on his Bluetooth speaker until the battery died. At some point I caught my own reflection in the tall mirror we planned to take. I saw myself, then saw Derek. Except in the reflection, he was standing still by the kitchen. In real life, he was walking behind me. I blinked, laughed it off, figured it was the drink. I fell asleep to the sound of the rain and that slow tick of the clock in the hall. The dream was worse. I was on the ceiling, floating, or stuck there, looking down at myself, my own body curled on the couch. But Derek had no face, just a smooth surface where everything should be. I woke up sometime in the middle of the night. The fire had died down to embers, and everything was steeped in that kind of thick dark that feels alive. Derek was standing by the glass door, not moving, just staring out into the woods. I sat up and asked him what he was doing. He didn't turn around, just said, "Someone walked past the yard a minute ago." His voice was low, like he was trying not to wake the house. I got up, walked to his side. The rain had lightened to a mist. The yard looked empty. No footprints in the mud. Nothing moving except tree branches shifting with the last wind. We locked the door and went back to sleep. But I didn't feel rested. Something about the way he had stood there, too still, didn't sit right. I kept one flashlight in my sleeping bag, just in case. Morning came gray. Fog thick along the hilltop. I wanted to leave as soon as we could, but Derek just grunted, rolled over, said 5 more minutes. The silence outside was heavy. No wind, no bugs, no bird calls. I packed our haul into a duffel, tried to start the truck. Battery light blinked red, then flat, dead. I didn't even swear, just sat there a second, letting the weight of it hit. Back inside, we waited for the rain to ease. Both of us slumped on the couch again. I must have dozed off, because I dreamt I heard the refrigerator door creak open. That exact high-pitched metal sound. But it wasn't a dream. My eyes snap open. The cold is real. A hand grabs my throat from behind. Huge, calloused, cold like stone. It yanks me backwards off the couch. I choke, kick. My flashlight rolls across the floor. From the corner of my eye, something crawls out from behind the fridge. Not a man. Too long, joints bending the wrong way, arms dragging behind it like broken sticks. Its head tilts, but shows no face. Just stretched skin where features should be. I kick again, break free, scramble down the hall, shouting for Derek. He appears, knife already out. He lunges at it. The blade snaps in two like it hit rock. We bolt. The front door slams open with our weight. Rain pours as we sprint through the yard. Trees blur past. Then I hear it. Derek screams. I turn. He is gone, pulled backward into the dark like something reeled him in. No trace. No sound. Just rain swallowing his last cry. I run. I do not stop. They found me 3 days later, wandering along a service road with a branch in my hand like it was a weapon. I could barely speak. Couldn't explain where I'd been. They searched the woods, but there was no sign of Derek. No blood. No tracks. Not even the cabin was easy to find again. I don't sleep in places with closed walls anymore. And every time I try, I wake at midnight to the sound of a refrigerator door creaking open, even if there isn't one in the room. I've never told anyone this story. Maybe because I don't want to remember it. Maybe because I'm still scared of what might happen if I say it out loud. But every year, on the first full moon of September, I stay awake until dawn because I'm afraid I'll hear the bells again. I was 32 back then. Had just come out the other end of something ugly. A counterfeit ring in Piedmont went bad. One of the guys gave me up to save his own skin. I walked for days, cutting through the hills of eastern Kentucky, avoiding the highways, the towns, the lights. I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to exist. That was how I found the cabin. It was made of dark wood, almost black with age, sitting low in a fold between ridges like it had sunk there on purpose. The roof held. The door was locked. That was more than I could say for most places I'd slept. But what made me pause was what sat on the porch. A square of wood carved with the image of an open eye inside a broken circle. Above it, nailed to the beam under the eave, hung a short row of dry metal bells. They didn't sway, didn't chime, just hung there like they were waiting. I should have turned around, but I was too tired, too cold. I picked the lock with a flattened nail, stepped inside, and closed the door behind me. It smelled like burnt dust and wet pine. The floor creaked softly, like it didn't want to be loud. On the table was a cloth-bound book, no title. I flipped it open and saw uneven handwriting scratched in charcoal. The first page read, "Do not sleep past the third night if the bells do not ring." infamous. I laughed. Out loud. Alone. Sure, I said, and setting the book down. I'll keep that in mind. Things for the place, and there was a cot, a wood stove, a shelf with dried herbs, and a cracked mirror leaned against the far wall. The place hadn't been ransacked. It hadn't even been touched. It was like someone had stepped out mid-task and never came back. That night, the bells didn't ring. Nothing happened. I made a small fire, boiled a tin of beans, and lay down on the cot. The quiet was so deep it hurt, but I slept. On the second night, I woke around 2 a.m. to wind. Not strong, but strange. It hissed through the trees without touching the leaves. That was the first sign. I got up to piss. When I looked into the water mirror near the sink, I saw someone behind me. A man in a wide straw hat. His face was black, smeared like coal, and he stood still as stone. I spun around. No one there. But when I looked down, just beside my cot, I saw a broken ring made of salt on the floor. It hadn't been there before. I hadn't brought any salt. That morning, I went back to the book. Page after page of scrawled instructions, warnings, half-legible names. On the last page, written in red ink, were 7 words that hadn't been there the night before. The last night watchman has abandoned post. I closed the book and didn't open it again. Later that evening, I went to rinse my face in the basin outside. The sky was cloudless. The woods were still. But when I bent over the water, my own reflection did not appear. Instead, I saw the same blackened face from before. The man in the straw hat. He was grinning now, slow and deliberate, as if he had all the time in the world. I stumbled back, heart hammering. When I looked at the cabin door, my throat went dry. The eye symbol had been carved into the wood, not painted, not drawn, carved. The lines were fresh, the wood still warm, and I hadn't heard a single sound. I decided to leave that night. I stuffed my few belongings into my coat pockets and stepped into the trees with a flashlight. The trail should have led me out to a dirt road within an hour. But after 4 hours of walking, I came out of the trees onto the same cabin porch from the opposite direction. My footprints were already there. In the wind, I heard a faint rattling, dry, like old seeds in a gourd. The row of bells above the porch did not move. Yet the sound came closer, circling. My stomach turned cold. I went back inside and bolted the door, dragging a chair against it. I built a fire and poured a line of salt in a circle on the floor, the way I had seen in old books. My hands trembled. I don't want this, I said out loud. I don't belong here. The words felt small, lost in the cabin's dark walls. For a while everything was still. The bells stayed silent. The fire cracked softly. My head dipped. My eyelids grew heavy. I thought maybe it had ended. I fell asleep sitting up inside the salt ring. In my dream, I was in the forest. Around me stood people in straw cloaks, faces blackened with ash. They bowed their heads and whispered in a voice like dry leaves. A voice older than mine said, "No one chooses this post. They are chosen." Even Daxed. I woke with a start. My breath caught. The fire had died down to embers. And there, behind my neck, was a slow, damp breath. I was not alone. I did not turn. I stared straight ahead. The bells on the porch were ringing now, but no wind moved. A low, uneven chime, like a warning. My reflection in the small hand mirror beside me had changed. It showed me standing outside in the trees, eyes bleeding dark. I lunged to my feet, scattering the salt, and ran for the door. It was sealed. The windows were fog black, no view beyond. I slammed my shoulder against the wood until it cracked. Then I was running, through the same trees, moonlight spilling between trunks. My lungs burned, my legs shook. But the forest repeated itself, each path the same as the last. No end. I tripped on a mound in the dark. My hands hit cold stone. When I felt along it, I realized it was a grave marker. No name, only the eye carved in its center, warm under my fingers, as if something had just left it there. I do not remember how I got out, only that I woke days later on the edge of another county road, clothes torn. No memory of the miles between. I never told anyone, never went back. Now, almost 60, I still stay awake on the first full moon of September. In the bathroom mirror of my apartment, I sometimes catch a glimpse of a dark face watching me through the crack of the door. And when the night is very quiet, I hear a bell that no one else hears. Slow, dry, waiting. The first time we heard it, Simon and I were setting up our sleeping bags in the old cabin's front room. 3 soft knocks against the rear wall, even and slow, like a careful hand. The kind of sound that doesn't belong to wind or animals. We froze, listened, then stepped outside with flashlights. Nothing, just trees shifting in early autumn breeze and the porch creaking beneath our boots. The cabin had no neighbors for miles, no electricity, and no signal, only a rusted generator, 2 kerosene lamps, and memories buried in every floorboard. We told ourselves it was the wood settling. We had come to sell it. After our uncle died suddenly in August, the land passed down to us. Neither of us had spoken to him in years. He had lived up here alone for 2 decades, tucked in the hills of Red River Gorge, Kentucky. "This place smells the same," Simon muttered, pushing open the backroom door. "Smoke and mice. Thagan always." He was 26, taller than I remembered. We hadn't been close since Mom died, but the drive up was quiet, and now that we were here, the quiet stretched between us even more. The cabin looked almost untouched. Dishes in the sink, a dusty calendar pinned to the wall from March, 2 jackets still hanging on the door hook. I started sweeping out the kitchen while Simon hauled boxes down from the loft. That night, we lit one of the old oil lamps and sat at the table with a bottle of bourbon we brought from town. It burned too fast, and the silence between us grew easier with each glass. By the time we unrolled the sleeping bags, we were half laughing about how strange it felt to be back. Then came the knocks. 3, just like before. We didn't joke after that. The next morning, while cleaning out the bathroom, Simon found a pink hair tie looped around the window latch. His fingers paused over it. "You remember anyone up here ever being female?" he asked. I shook my head. "Just Uncle Rob." "We are sitting. That's what I thought. Thanks for watching." He didn't say more, but he left the tie exactly where it was. Later, in the kitchen, I noticed something else. Scratches on the floorboards in the shape of a loose circle, half faded under the table. I bent down, ran my fingers over them. "Probably from moving furniture," I mumbled, though the chairs hadn't been moved. That night, the air grew colder. Wind picked up but carried no leaves. I checked every window and door, made sure everything was locked. Still, in the morning, the front room window was open wide. No footprints. No signs of forcing. "You sure you closed it?" Simon asked. "Absolutely. Right now." He didn't answer, just stared out the window like he was trying to see something behind the trees. That was when he said it. "Uncle Rob. He never lived alone up here." "Wiesen distaka." I looked up. "What do you mean?" "It is a crassus an arment." He shook his head. "Never mind. He's why." I wanted to press, but something in his face warned me off. That night, I dreamed I was trapped inside the cabin. No doors, no windows, just walls closing in and a whisper behind my ear every time I blinked. I woke, sweating, my mouth dry. The third evening, I stepped outside to take a piss behind the woodshed. The trees were dark and silent. Then I heard it. "Simon, open the door." A woman's voice. Soft, carried clearly through the stillness. I froze. My breath caught. I turned back to the cabin. The porch light was off, but I could see the front window was open again. Inside, Simon was standing in front of it, barefoot, staring out. "What are you doing?" I asked, stepping in, heart pounding. He didn't look at me. His eyes were on the frame. Someone had carved something into the wood, a jagged eye with slashes through it. It looked fresh. "Uncle put that there," he said softly. "Not as a warning, as a seal. If you not to and dan, to keep something out. It is a patience in this wide, and the many woes in common anyways that by wade." Simon finally turned to me. His face was pale. "No. To keep something in. That they Savins and his kind." We didn't sleep after that. We packed what we could and headed for the truck. But the back tire was flat, not slowly leaking. Slashed. Clean. Deep. Straight through the rubber. Simon checked the generator. It sputtered once, coughed, and died. The flashlight flickered in my hand even with new batteries. I don't know why, but I said it anyway. We stay put till morning. Lock everything. Block the windows. And we keep that thing shut. They struck. The only place with a lock that worked from the inside was the woodshed. It had a root cellar beneath it, mostly empty except for firewood and an old wooden bin. We pulled the latch shut behind us and climbed into the bin with an old blanket. It was cramped, smelled like old pine and soil, but the quiet felt different down there, as if the walls above had grown thick with things they could not say. Simon lay curled beside me, his voice soft in the dark. Uncle used to talk to himself at night. I thought it was just habit, but once, I woke up and he was whispering to the window, begging it not to open. "Our mist." He paused. I could feel him trembling next to me. He said, "Every generation, someone in the family has to watch it, has to make sure it stays shut. And if it opens on its own." He didn't finish. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Just the sound of breathing. Hours. And something distant. Wind, maybe. But wrong. Too slow. Too rhythmic. I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, Simon was gripping my arm hard enough to hurt. He didn't say a word. He just stared upward. Above us, the floorboards creaked. Once. Then again. Then came the footsteps. Heavy. Slow. Dragging something. The door to the woodshed shifted. Just slightly. The latch scraped against the frame. My breath caught in my throat. I reached for Simon's hand. Then came the breathing. It presses through the wood. Wet. Deep. Steady. Something exhaled through the crack of the hatch. Close enough to feel. And then the voice. Not loud. Not whispered. Just behind my head. "You never shut it all the way, did you?" Breaktation. My blood turned to ice. I didn't move. Something touched the back of my neck. Not a hand. Not quite. It was cold. Damp. Like bark or bone. Simon squeezed my fingers. Neither of us breathed. The latch held. Minutes passed like hours. Then, slowly, the breathing faded. The footsteps retreated. Silence returned. But it was not the same silence. It was a silence that waited. We stayed there until dawn. When we stepped outside, the trees looked normal. The sun burned off the fog. But we didn't speak. We didn't even pack. We just walked. For hours. Until we reached the main road and flagged down a passing truck. We sold the cabin through an agent, told them it was haunted in jest, and they laughed. But months later, I got an email, a photo, from the new owner. It was the same window, wide open. And now, sometimes, when the wind picks up just right outside my apartment, I hear it again. 3 slow knocks. On the bedroom wall, The first thing I noticed was how often June looked up the stairs. We hadn't even been in the cabin an hour. Ellie was unpacking groceries and I was testing the old propane heater. But June kept stopping in the middle of the room and staring at the second floor. Her eyes didn't move, just locked on the dark gap beyond the stair rail. "What are you looking at, sweetheart?" Ellie asked, wiping her hands on a towel. June pointed. "There's someone standing up there. NE5 self." We froze. Ellie glanced at me, and I tried to smile. "It's just shadows. The upstairs hasn't been cleaned in years." P.S. Al. The cabin had been in our family since the 60s. A 2-story log home in the woods, tucked off a gravel road south of Red River Gorge. When the pandemic hit, Ellie suggested we stay there for a few weeks until things calmed down. "Safer than the city," she said. "Cleaner air." The ground floor was in decent shape. We dusted the old dining table, swept the hearth, and found most of the windows still sealed tight. Upstairs was another story. Cobwebs, peeling wallpaper, a sour smell that made me close the door and pretend we never had a second floor at all. The first night was quiet, cold, but manageable. June fell asleep between Ellie and me on the couch. We took turns stoking the fire with chopped wood from the porch. I thought we might actually have a shot at peace. But in the morning, there were footprints in the dust on the stairs. Small ones. Bare. "Did she go up there?" I asked Ellie, nodding toward June, who was still half asleep, cradling a stuffed bear. Ellie shook her head. "She doesn't like stairs. You know that. Is so crike." We brushed them away with a broom. Said nothing more. But that night, I made sure to close the upstairs door and place a chair in front of it. The next few days got stranger. Ellie grew snappish, withdrawn. She would stare at nothing for minutes at a time, fingers clenched on her tea mug. I caught her crying quietly in the kitchen, and when I asked, she shook her head. "Just tired," she said. "Everything feels heavy here. This is not a thing." June kept drawing. Always the same picture. A square house, sloped roof, a little girl standing in the yard, and in the upper window, a figure. No face, just dark smudges where eyes and mouth should be. One night, I woke to the sound of creaking floorboards above our heads. Not settling wood, not mice. Slow, pacing steps from one end of the upstairs hall to the other. I grabbed the fireplace poker and went up, flashlight in hand. Nothing, just the same thick dust. But someone had walked through it. Again. The next morning, Ellie told me something I hadn't known. "When I was little," she said, "they made me sleep up there. Just one night. I begged not to. There was something else in the room. Down private bed. I waited. It wasn't a person," she whispered. "It didn't move like one. It didn't breathe. Is it not a court now?" I believed her. June started whispering to someone invisible during the day. Little murmurs. Sometimes she laughed. Sometimes she cried. When we asked who she was talking to, she'd say, "The lady upstairs. Thanks for watching." One night, the cat darted from under the couch and ran straight out the front door into the rain. We never saw her again. But the worst was finding Ellie standing halfway up the stairs at 3 a.m., barefoot, hair soaked in sweat. Her eyes were wide open but empty. "Ellie," I said gently, "come back down." "Is Hal to you?" She turned her head just a little. She said, "I need to sleep in the old bed." She said, "It's time." "Jack." I took her by the arm and led her back to the couch, but she kept whispering something under her breath the whole way down. I didn't let her out of my sight after that, and I didn't wait another night before blocking off the stairs. I woke up around 3 a.m. because something hit the floor upstairs. It wasn't a creak or a groan. It was a full, heavy thud like someone had dropped a box or a body, the kind of sound that fills your chest before your brain catches up. I grabbed the fireplace poker and stepped into the hallway. The air was colder, The boards I nailed across the stairs were gone. Not broken. Just removed. Laid neatly to the side. The dresser I had pushed against the banister was dragged back several feet, like it had been moved slowly. The upstairs door was wide open. No noise. No wind. Just open. I stood at the bottom of the stairs and whispered, "Ellie." But she didn't answer. Then I turned toward the mirror in the entryway. Ellie was behind me, her eyes wide, face blank. I spun around. Nothing. She wasn't there. I ran to her room and found her asleep, breathing steady beside June. I whispered her name, louder than I meant to. She woke, confused. Then we both looked at the bed. June was gone. I shouted and ran into the hallway. The cold hit harder as I neared the stairs. Then I heard it. A soft laugh. From above. Not June's voice. Not a child. I reached the top of the stairs. The attic is pitch black. My flashlight catches movement, a small arm, being pulled into the shadows. It is June's arm. I lunge forward, grab her wrist. Something pulls from the other side. Fingers like branches wrap around her shoulder. Thin, cold. They are not hers. I scream her name, pull with everything I have. The hand slips. A claw drags across my wrist. Ice cold. Sharp, but not deep. We fall back down the stairs. I cradle her as she cries. Ellie is there. Her arms reach for us. We slam the attic door shut together. We do not sleep again. At sunrise, we packed what we could and left the rest. Walked down the trail until we reached the road. A ranger picked us up around noon. I never looked back. We sold the cabin, boarded every window and door. I hired someone to seal the attic, paid in cash, told them not to ask questions. 3 weeks later, I received a photo in the mail. No return address. No note. It showed the attic window, wide open. June stopped drawing after that. Ellie never talked about it again. And I still wake sometimes. Around 3 a.m. Always the same feeling. Something moving just above me. In houses with no second floor. I was Rachel, 29 years old. I had come to this cabin with one purpose: to shut off my phone, my email, and the noise of the world. For 5 years I had worked in digital media, living on deadlines and scrolling feeds until my eyes burned. I thought I was escaping it all when I booked this place. A rustic off-grid retreat in the woods of Kentucky, rented through a new travel app that promised total disconnection. No host, no check-in, just a code sent to my phone that unlocked the door. The cabin looked exactly like the pictures. Small, tidy, wooden walls polished with age, a single bedroom, and a kitchen with a gas stove, and no Wi-Fi. I told myself I could finally breathe again. But that first night, when I turned on the living room lamp, I noticed the sofa cushion had a deep indent, as if someone had been sitting there for hours. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe the cleaning crew had rested a while. Maybe the cushion was old. Still, I found myself checking the door lock again before I went to bed. The next morning, another detail unsettled me. The bathroom window was cracked open an inch. I remembered locking it tight the night before. I shut it firmly and told myself not to start imagining things. Then my phone buzzed. The same app that booked the cabin sent me a notification. New device connected to property. My chest tightened. When I opened the app to check, the message was gone. The screen was blank, as if no history existed at all. That night at 3:12 a.m., the outdoor floodlight flicked on. I sat up in bed, staring at the curtains, waiting for movement. Nothing came. By the time I peeked outside, the yard was empty. The light turned off on its own after a few minutes. It happened again the next night. Same exact time. The third night too. Always 3:12. I started to dread that minute on the clock. lying awake until it passed. I tried setting up my GoPro on the windowsill, hoping to catch whatever triggered the light. In the morning, the memory card was empty. No files. No folders. As if the camera had never been turned on at all. One evening, I saw a shadow through the living room curtain. A tall shape crossing the porch, clear against the fabric. My heart pounded as I yanked the curtain aside. The porch was bare, but when I turned back, the sofa cushion sagged lower than before, pressed deep, like someone invisible had just stood up. By the fourth night, I was carrying my water bottle everywhere, a stainless steel one with scratches from years of use. I left it in the kitchen before bed. Yet, when I woke in the dark, it was lying on the blanket next to me. And then came the sound. At exactly 3:12, the floodlight clicked on. 4 slow knocks tapped against the glass door. Deliberate. Even. I froze in place. My lungs barely moved. The knocks repeated. 4 beats again. The rhythm matched the thudding of my heart, each one dragging out longer than I thought possible. I didn't move until the sky started to lighten behind the trees. As soon as it felt safe, I threw clothes into my bag, grabbed my keys, and rushed to the car. When I turned the ignition, the engine clicked once, then nothing. The battery was dead. My phone still showed no bars. I walked in circles on the gravel driveway, holding it up to the sky, hoping for a signal. The app I booked through was frozen. No address, no reservation, no contact. I went back inside, bolted the door, and shut every window tight. I told myself I would wait one more night and leave at first light. I found a paring knife in the drawer and carried it from room to room like a security blanket. That evening was too quiet. The air was still. No lights. No movement. Even the usual forest sounds had thinned out. I made myself tea and sat at the table with a notebook, scribbling down everything I could remember. Maybe I'd imagined it. The knocks. The water bottle. The cushion. I told myself it was exhaustion. Burnout twisted into paranoia. I drank slowly, trying to calm my breath. At midnight, I went to the bathroom to wash my face. The mirror was streaked with condensation even though I hadn't used hot water. As I leaned in to wipe it clean, something passed behind me. A shadow. I spin around. No sound. No footsteps. I run. Slam the bedroom door. Lock it. I crawl beneath the bed. The only place that stays in shadow. My chest heaves. I grip the knife so tight my knuckles ache. Then I see them. Bare feet. Slowly stepping into the room. I hear nothing. No door. No floorboard creak. Just feet. The bed shifts above me. The mattress dips. Someone is sitting directly above my face. I stare through the gap in the slats. I can see the hem of a shirt, a knee bent. Then something brushes against my hair, light as a fingernail, or breath. It lingers, strokes once, then it is gone. I do not sleep. I do not speak. I wait for daylight with my knife clenched to my chest. When the sun rises, I crawl out. The room is empty. The bed still bears a faint hollow where someone sat. I step outside. My car starts on the first try. I drive until I see a town. Any town. I find a sheriff's office. I tell them everything. They ask for the app name. I show them my phone. There is no record. No download history. No booking. Nothing. 3 days later, a box arrives at my apartment. No return address. Inside is my water bottle, the one I kept in the car. I returned to the old cabin by Creighton Lake the week after the funeral. It was where we used to spend every summer, back when things still felt whole. Now the cabin was being sold. I just needed to clean out what was left and say goodbye. The front steps creaked the same way I remembered. Inside, it looked untouched. The curtains still hung in the same dusty blue. The air still carried that soft scent of damp wood and lake moss, but there was no dust on the counters, no cobwebs in the corners. On the dining table, I found something that hadn't been there before, a silver picture frame. Inside it, a photo of me and my mother. We were sitting on the dock, laughing, heads leaned together. I had never seen that picture in my life. For a second, I thought maybe a neighbor had come by, left it there as a kind gesture. But the seal on the doorframe was still intact, just like I had left it after locking up the last time we came. No one had entered since Mom. I told myself it didn't matter. There were 100 little things I had forgotten about this place. Still, that photo sat heavy in my mind. I put it face down. Later that afternoon, I went to the master bedroom. The bed was made. The lamp still had the same faded shade, but the mirror on the wall gave me pause. It didn't look quite right. I stood across from it and saw myself, but something shifted in the corner. A figure, standing near the window in the reflection. I turned around. The room was empty. I blinked hard, looked again. Nothing. By the front door, a coat hung on the hook. Heavy, brown wool, too large for me. My father's. He died 10 years ago, and we burned his things after the memorial. I remembered feeding that exact coat into the flames. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept waking up at strange hours, disoriented and clammy. But every night, without fail, I jolted awake at 4:18, eyes wide, heart racing, staring into the ceiling as if something had called my name just before I opened them. On the third morning, I noticed the mirror had shifted, only a few inches, but it was enough. I stepped closer and saw smudges on the wall behind it, ashy, dark gray fingerprints. Not mine. I thought about taking it down, thought about smashing it, but I didn't. Instead, I turned it to face the wall. That evening, around sunset, I passed by again and caught movement out of the corner of my eye. I stopped. The mirror, even faced away, reflected light oddly. I leaned close, cautiously, and something clicked. I see myself sitting at the writing desk in the corner, still, focused, except I am standing. I spin around. The desk is empty. I look down at the table. There, in the middle of the surface, is my mother's fountain pen, the one I kept with me in my bag. It is smeared with wet soil. Bits of grit cling to the cap like it was dragged across the ground. Under the table, a piece of torn paper. I kneel, slowly, and pick it up. Scrawled in shaky ink, crooked and uneven, "Do not look in the mirror after sunset." I spent the next hour covering every mirror in the cabin, the bathroom, the bedroom, even the tiny one on my travel kit. I used towels, pillowcases, whatever I could find. When I was done, the cabin felt darker somehow, like I had blinded it. I packed what I could, threw the fountain pen into a plastic bag, and went to start the car. It didn't even click. The dome light didn't come on. The battery was dead, though it had been fine just the day before. My phone barely had a signal bar, not enough to load a map or call for help. The nearest cluster of houses was about 3 miles through the woods. I used to hike there with my parents, back when I was small enough to ride on my dad's shoulders. I locked the cabin and started walking. The air smelled of wet pine and earth. The trail was quiet, too quiet. I kept looking back, half expecting to see someone following, though I saw no one. The deeper I went, the more the silence lifted. Birdsong returned. Wind rustled through the canopy. I stopped under an old oak tree, pulled out a granola bar and drank from my water bottle. For a moment, it felt normal again, like the whole thing had been in my head. I told myself that grief could do strange things. The cabin was just a place, just wood and memories. I would leave it behind soon. I picked up my pace as the sun dipped lower. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Heavy. Fast. I freeze. Listen, they come again. I turn, but no one is there. I run. The trail blurs under my feet. The footsteps chase me. Closer now, matching my rhythm, then overtaking it. I veer off the path, down a narrow offshoot I do not recognize. It twists sharply. My foot catches. I tumble forward. The ground falls out from under me. Stones slash at my arms and knees. I slide down a steep slope, crashing through branches, until I hit hard, gasping. At the bottom, I try to stand. My shoulder screams. I look up. The top of the ridge, a figure stands. It has no face, no outline, just a void, shaped like a person. The sunlight shines through it. It does not move, but I feel it watching. I turn and run. I do not stop. Not until the trees thin and I see the wire fence that marks the start of someone's land. I collapse against it, crying, still clutching that plastic bag with the pen inside. I stayed at my brother's place after the hospital. Dislocated shoulder, fractured rib. The doctor said I was lucky. A few weeks later, I got my things back from the cabin. A forest ranger had found my bag hanging from the porch. Tucked inside, in a small side pocket, was a shard of mirror. I had never packed it. Now, no matter where I sleep, I wake up at 4:18 every morning. And every time, someone whispers my name. Close. So close I can almost feel their breath. But when I turn on the light, no one is there. My name is Travis. I used to have a family, a job at the auto shop, a wife who made banana bread on Sundays, and a little girl who played piano like she was born with it in her bones. Now I sleep under whatever roof I can find that doesn't ask questions or charge rent. That day it was pouring hard. Mean sideways rain that soaked through my jacket and into my socks. I'd been walking along the old utility trail through the Crenshaw woods, trying to find cover before dark. That was when I saw it, a small cabin, nearly swallowed by fog and dead vines, sitting crooked beneath a slope of pine. The front door wasn't locked, just swelled shut from years of rain and rot. I shoved it open with my shoulder and stood there dripping in the doorway, staring at a room that smelled like old dust and dried wood smoke. There was a mattress in one corner, moldy but dry, a brick fireplace, and a cast-iron stove. I told myself it was just for a night, maybe two. Patch up the hole in the roof, scrape up some canned food from town, then move on. But deep down I knew I was looking for a place to vanish, somewhere no one would come looking. That night, with the fire warm and my belly full from a dented can of beans, I lay down on the mattress and let the storm drown out the rest of the world. I had just started to drift off when I heard it. Soft at first, then more distinct. Footsteps above me. Not squirrels. Not wind. Heavier, like someone pacing the roof slow and steady. Boots on wet shingles. I froze. Hell no, I whispered, sat up, grabbed the flashlight. But when I went outside, the roof was empty. Just rain. Just trees. No footprints. No broken branches. The next morning, I checked again in daylight. Still nothing. I figured, maybe I imagined it. Lack of sleep and bad nerves. The mind does strange things when you've been living out of parking lots. But then came the little things. The chair at the table would be pulled out an inch further than I left it. The door would creak open even when I knew it was latched. Once, I found the matches I kept on the shelf laid out in a neat row on the windowsill, like someone had counted them. I tried to laugh it off. Cabin's just settling, I muttered. And I'm just losing it. He said, chill. Still, I started carrying my pocket knife everywhere, even to sleep. It made me feel better. Not safe, just less helpless. On the third night, I saw something standing at the edge of the woods, just past the tree line. A black shape, tall, unmoving, no features. I blinked, and it didn't move. I shouted, cursed, threw a rock. It didn't even flinch. When I went out there with the flashlight, it was gone. But I found claw marks on the outer door, thin and human-sized. Some old, some fresh. That was when I stopped telling myself it was nothing. I pushed the table in front of the door, slept with one eye open. The next morning, the table had been moved an inch, just enough to notice. Then came the fifth night. I had just shut my eyes when every window in the cabin rattled at once, loud and violent, like fists slamming on glass. I shot up, flashlight in one hand, knife in the other, swung the beam in every direction. No one. But on the ground outside, clear as day in the mud, were bare footprints. Long, narrow, and fresh. They led from the tree line to the porch, and stopped. No prints going back. Just those coming in. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the fire until it burned low, knife on my lap, eyes on the door. And even when it was dead quiet, I swear I still felt the roof above me, like something was crouched up there, listening, waiting. After that night, I stopped pretending the cabin was just another place to crash. I nailed boards over every window I could reach and left only a narrow slit in the roof for air. I dragged the table, chairs, and an old wardrobe against the front door until it barely moved on its hinges. The fireplace stayed hot. My knife never left my hand. The woods outside were silent in a way I had never heard before. Even birds had gone. The canned food I had scavenged tasted like metal, but I forced it down. I'm not dying in this dump, I muttered to the empty room. Not tonight. We sing Stand the Gaze when the never fang, when the ray chose. 3 hours passed without a sound. The fire cracked softly. For the first time since I arrived, I let my eyes drift shut. I dreamed of my daughter at the kitchen table. She was sketching with crayons, but when she looked up, her face was blank like paper. I woke with a jolt, the cabin still and dark. Then it started. At first a slow thud on the door, then another, harder, like a hammer striking wood. Each hit sent dust drifting from the ceiling. I gripped the knife tighter. My heart pounded in my ears. The wardrobe shifted half an inch under the blows. I run into the storage room and push a cabinet across the inner door. My flashlight flickers, weak and yellow. In the strobing light, I see a shadow move at the far end of the hall. Tall, bent at the shoulders. It crawls lower as it moves. Silent, deliberate, its limbs too long for a man. It climbs through the splintered frame where the window used to be. The boards give way with a crack. It does not make a sound when it lands. It does not have a face. I pull the small gas canister from my pack, unscrew the lid with shaking fingers, and toss it into the fireplace. The flames leap high, swallowing the hearth with a roar. Heat blasts across the room. I grab the trapdoor under the rug, kick it open, and drop through, landing hard on the damp earth below. I crawl through the root tunnel, hands and knees in mud, as the cabin groans above me. Behind me, I hear wood tearing, claws scraping, the thing dragging itself closer. My breath fogs in the narrow dark. The flashlight dies. For a moment I move blind. I burst out into the trees, barefoot, stumbling on thorns and stones. The cold cuts my lungs. I slide down a slick embankment, crashing through dead leaves until I hit rock at the bottom. My body aches, but I keep running. I do not look back. When I finally stop, the sky is glowing, faint with dawn. Smoke rises through the trees where the cabin stood. Flames lick the roof and walls. For a heartbeat, I think I see something standing on the roof, unmoving, a shape in the smoke. Then it is gone. I did not go back. The police found only a burned-out floor and my footprints leading away. No one else. No tracks. No sign of what had been there. They told me it must have been drug hallucinations or a squatter I scared off. Now I sleep in a shelter on the edge of town, trying again to claw my way back from the habit that ruined me. But every time it rains, I lie awake on my cot, staring at the ceiling. And in the soft patter of water on the roof, I swear I still hear it. Slow, deliberate steps, pacing above me in the dark.